talent without a direction is nothing at all. It's all about, us making sure we don't lose sight of our direction and, bringing that talent all together.
Talent without a direction is nothing at all. Now, he since has tried to clarify his comments by saying, I don't feel like the direction is lost. I feel like sometimes the focus is lost. Everybody on this team, everybody in this fan base needs to look themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, are they really here for the Cowboys, or are they really here to just place blame on each other? We talked about this in our first hour this morning. He's the highest paid player in the history of the franchise. Those may be comments that we could have lived without during the worst moments that they've seen in a while. That said, I want to spend this conversation talking about the potential for them to go out and get a huge name coach. I don't want to fire a man on Christmas, but it does feel like the Jason Garrett tenure is coming to an end if they don't get in this weekend. And the big names we're hearing attached to it, excuse me, are Urban Meyer and Lincoln Riley, the two huge college names. Mr. T, I start with you. If you're a general manager, if you're the person making those decisions, contemplating that, what are you looking at when you consider the college guys?
First of all, when you look at Lincoln Riley, he needs more experience. Let's look at what happened to Freddie Kitchens. He wasn't prepared, and he's failing. So if I'm Lincoln Riley, I take myself out of this discussion because I don't want to just be an NFL head coach. I want to be a successful NFL head coach. So I'm going to take my time. And if you look at the Dallas situation, every coach is talking about it. Jerry Jones is the only owner that speaks every Sunday night. So Monday morning, part of your job description is to parse the words of what your boss said nationally. We all want to be held accountable, but there's a time and a place. And if Jerry Jones doesn't change his behavior, this is going to be a less attractive job. That's not saying he won't get a good coach, but he's not going to get the best coach possible.
Well, you know both of these college guys well covering the game. What do you think of the notion of a guy like Riley or a guy like Urban going to the pros?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you talk to Lincoln Riley, and you hear him say this to the media, but even talking to him in person, he loves the college game. And yeah, you could say maybe he's saying all the right things. I think he legitimately loves it and wants to stick around there. He has a great situation there. And when you talk about, a superior who is giving him advice, who's giving him mentorship, it's Bob Stoops, who's been around that program and stays in the wing. So that's what he's used to when it comes to having all of that. Jerry Jones in that scenario, I'm not sure that he's attracted to that. And Urban Meyer is the wild card in all of this, Greeny, because he might be, and he might want to just see what he would have at that next level.
Gather around the fireplace, boys and girls.
Yes.
Let me give you some Dallas Cowboys games.
Yes.
Okay. I love Jimmy Johnson, okay? He won 2 Super Bowls with the Dallas Cowboys. And Jerry Jones is so petty that he's not in the Ring of Honor. Why? Because people gave Jimmy Johnson a lot of the credit versus Jerry. And they went on to win it with Barry Switzer, but it was still Jimmy's players.
Right.
You guys actually think he's going to hire Urban Meyer or Lincoln Riley and give them $100 million?
Well,
I don't see that happening. Now, if you go a college route, I'm going to go under the radar for you. And I know as a Michigan Wolverine, I probably shouldn't be saying this. If the Dallas Cowboys are going to hire a college coach, they should hire Ryan Day. And the reason why is because he's not going to come with the cachet of a Lincoln Riley or Urban Meyer.
Jay, let me ask you this. If you're Ryan Day, why would you do that? You're set up in Columbus for success. You have the infrastructure. You're recruiting really well. Why would you want to put yourself in a situation where your boss is going to speak every Sunday night, and now every Monday morning, win or lose, you got to deal with what your owner said? The 31 other owners don't speak, and that is meaningful because it makes the job that much harder.
Dollars and cents. If you get Lincoln Riley or Urban Meyer, that's $75 million. You get Ryan Day, it's probably $30 million. And if you're Ryan Day, that may be an opportunity you don't want to turn down. I'm just saying, if Jerry's going to go the collegiate route, to me, he's not going to go to one of the greats because that's going to usurp his power and him talking to the media.
I hear what you're saying. I agree wholeheartedly. The best coach he hired since that was Bill Parcells, and that couldn't work because Bill wasn't going to put up with that. I totally understand what you're saying. Dan Orlovsky, sitting in that chair earlier this week, said what that means is, at the end of the day, Jerry Jones cares about power and control more than he cares about winning. And that's a fascinating thing for a man at this stage in his life who I think desperately wants to win another championship. You don't see him taking a half a step back and saying, all right, Urban, get me to the promised land.
Just think about this. When you look at his, can we find another title for this guy? Who? He's the owner.
Yes.
He's the president.
Right.
He's the general manager. He would love to be the head coach. Okay? So at some point, you're not going to relinquish that. He's made up his mind. This is who he is. You just said it, Mr. T. He's the only owner that's talking to the media after every game.
That's why, to me, the name to watch here, guys, Mike McCarthy. Lincoln Riley, Urban Meyer, they have a lot more options. Mike McCarthy wants to coach again. He's made that very clear. That's why I think it's going to be somebody in that pool of candidates.
Here's what I really wanted to ask you, though, Jalen.
Okay.
Because you know the difference between being a collegiate and being a pro. So if you're a guy like Urban Meyer, and Laura could tell you better than anybody, she worked for him back in the day. All the college coaches, they're used to having total control, right? The situation is all theirs. And the players have no power, as we've discussed ad nauseum. The pros is a totally different level. Do you see a college coach being able to walk in there and deal with guys who in some cases are making as much money as he is?
There are some guys that have been able to do it. We see Pete Carroll. There's been a number of guys that won championships in college and been able to be successful in the NFL. But here's what's unique about the Dallas Cowboys. You walk right past the parent and go to the grandparent, Jerry Jones. That's the problem. It don't matter who the coach is.
Right.
You're trying to impress Jerry. You're not even necessarily trying to impress the coach. And I got to say one more thing about the Dallas Cowboys players.
Yeah.
As much as we're going to pile on Jason Garrett, they're not getting it done. Didn't you just say DeMarcus Lawrence is the highest paid player in the history of Dallas Cowboys?
That is correct.
Okay, that means you got a ball. Jalen Smith, you got a ball. Dak, Zeke, you got a ball. Amari Cooper, you got to play. At some point, you can't always just put it on the coach. Players got to get out there and perform.
I agree. Now, for Zeke the ball, they have to actually give him the ball. They seem inexplicably hesitant to do that. I want to sort of narrow this down here, though. Laura, do you believe Urban Meyer in his heart of hearts wants to coach in the NFL?
I don't think he wants to coach in the NFL, but I do think in his heart of hearts, he's a competitor and he's curious about it. So I would say that it's not some desire that he's sitting out there like, oh yeah, let me take all these meetings, but he's doing it because he wants to hear about it and he has that competitive fire in him to see if he can succeed at the next level. One thing about all this, if you actually look at the coaches we're talking about here, Lincoln Riley, Urban Meyer, and Ryan Day, even Matt Rule, I would throw him in the mix as well. Urban Meyer is the one that you hear that doesn't necessarily or didn't necessarily run his program like a pro program. You hear around Oklahoma, you hear around Ohio State now with Ryan Day there and Matt Rule at Baylor. They run their programs like pro programs. Now, a lot of that is because they want to show recruits, hey, this gets you ready for the NFL. But they're already running those systems very similarly to what they do at the next level. Ryan Day also has NFL experience.
Yeah, I think Matt Rule makes the most sense. Did a great job at Temple, obviously doing a historically good job at Baylor, has a Tom Coughlin, Bill Parcells background. And again, Jalen, you mentioned guys like Jimmy Johnson, Pete Carroll. The guys that have been successful had a lot of experience. And again, Matt Rule, with his experience, has a better chance of success than someone like Ryan Day or Lincoln Riley.
Okay, so we'll sort of put a ribbon on this, and we'll see where we think it all will wind up. The decisions on that probably get made the next 2 weeks. Meanwhile, before we do anything else, Marshawn Lynch was back in Seattle yesterday, and we're going to now show you the entirety of his welcome back press conference.
What brought you back this time?
Happy holidays. Merry New Year. Y'all have a great day. It's a great feeling to be back.
And that was it.
Consistent, just like Bill Belichick. You know what you're going to get out of Marshawn Lynch, and I like that.
You know what?